When Angie introduced me, she very politely pointed out I had been a former government bureaucrat. But I could say I'm a recovering bureaucrat. It's a 12-step program, and sometimes, like now, I'm backsliding a bit. One thing that's been mentioned several times is the multidimensionality of agriculture, and we don't seem to see it that way. We tend to see it as more one-dimensional. When you look at world trade, for example, a friend of mine who's an economist says that free trade is a little like free love. There can be unintended consequences. But we sort of have it upside down. We've often talked about sustainable agriculture for years as having three components. It has to be economically sound, ecologically sound, and socially responsible. But in the area of world agriculture development and trade, we tend to just kind of go with the first one, economics. But the economist John Eichert said we really had that upside down. If we look at these three things, economics, ecology, and sociology, the ecological capital comes first, because the social and the productivity depend upon the vitality of the ecological system. So that should be first. Then he says the social component should be second, because really the economy serves the social structure. And so that we really have that hierarchy, and we have that actually turned upside down in our development for the most part. And that it's a real danger, because if we allow economic interests to dominate development, then we run the risk of eroding our ecological capital, eroding our social capital, and ultimately our economic as well. And the Green Revolution demonstrated what's possible through industrial development. We can do a lot through industrial agriculture development, but we found that we've sacrificed our ecological and sociological capital, and we need to now build in the other direction. And we have to really critically evaluate the financial interests that would like to use their proprietary interests and as a basis for developing around the world. The multinational corporations would like to say, our technology will develop the world. Again, that turns it upside down, but that leaves us really in a situation of sort of a corporate colonialism. If you remember back in grade school, you studied colonialism, where powerful countries went out and captured a country and ran their economy and extracted resources. But we're doing that in a more subtle way now, where multinational corporations can go to third world countries and can, without owning the farmer, without owning the farm, can own the farmer and can control the process very easily just by controlling the means here through their technology. And that actually, it spills over into this country. We have similar problems. We have concentration of markets. Mary Hendrickson over here, she has looked closely at, she's a leader in this, looking at the concentration of markets. For example, pork processing. 65% of that market is controlled by 4 corporations. In beef processing, 84% controlled by 4 corporations. We heard about the seed technology. In this country, it's getting more and more concentrated. So we really are in danger of turning our agriculture into a third world economy. Even here in Iowa, take some very simple examples. We put big wind farms in Iowa. Great, we generate electricity. But if these big wind farms are owned by outside investors outside of the country, outside of the state, and the energy goes out of the state, then we're really extracting these resources from Iowa and taking them out. And the same thing with biofuels. With our biofuels, all the biofuels work we're doing here in this country, what is it? It's not fueling agriculture. We're extracting it. We're producing, for example, corn mostly for ethanol, which is used to run cars on highways. So it doesn't fuel agriculture. And it's not a very efficient system, because we know, well, the average passenger vehicle, if you throw the SUVs in there, gets about 22 miles a gallon. If we increase that mileage by 2 miles per gallon, we'd save more fuel and all the ethanol we produce in this country with 30% of our corn. So we really have to reprioritize, and we don't want to turn ourselves into an extractive economy. We don't want to do corporate colonialism here in this country as well, in this state too.
I'd like to thank Dr. Heron and the rest of the panel for making me feel so at home. I feel just like I'm at an international Via Campesina conference. And I understand that Secretary of Agriculture Vilsack is going to be in town tomorrow. He should be right out there in that audience. Everything has been pretty much said. I would just like to point out a couple of things in this ISTAD report that Via Campesina supports, and maybe bring up one question. We were very happy to see the ISTAD report acknowledge that locally controlled food systems based on agricultural or sustainable, ecological techniques are what is going to move the developing countries and developed countries to feed their people, to create jobs, to protect the environment, to deal with food safety, because if you're producing it locally and people know who's producing their food, they know who to come to if there's a problem. That's the way to feed the world. But we do have a question. Even if we decide on a huge, massive worldwide scale that we're going to be promoting sustainable agriculture, agrological agriculture, we have to do some hard thinking about who's going to implement the programs and hold the money, because if it is going to be the World Bank doing this, then it's not going to work, because the World Bank and other international financial institutions are not participatory, they don't honor smallholders, and they are dominated by U.S. corporations. So we have to give a lot of thought to what kind of structure will be in place for this implementation that's democratic, that's representative, that honors food sovereignty, and that allows the support to go to the people who are actually producing the food, feeding their communities in a healthy, sustainable way. And food sovereignty does deal with access to this food, does deal with access to land and to resources, and food aid does not. So we were wanting to tell you all that we have to find a way to implement these proposals in such a way that they honor food sovereignty, that they honor local control. Thanks.